An individual who is now dead, but who at the time was very much alive, and I talked with him, and he did some lecturing on his own on some of the underground operations, a man by the name of Phil Schneider. I mentioned this to him at one of the lectures when he showed up. This was about '93. I mentioned the whole Montauk Boys program to him, and he became a little upset about it. He went to the local police department in Portland, Oregon, where he comes from, and said something about it. And he said they told him, "You best keep your nose out of matters that don't concern you." So he got even more incensed and went to the FBI, and he fortunately latched on to one of the older people in the FBI who had been there over 22 years. And he says, "Montauk Boys program, yes, we know all about it." "What are you doing about it?" "Nothing." "Why not?" "Our hands are tied." "What do you mean our hands are tied?" He says, "We can't do anything about it." But then he started discussing let's say, the numbers and the aspects of this. Kids disappear in the U.S. all the time. This is well known. The FBI reports on it annually. And you see, of course, these pictures used to be on milk cartons. Have you seen this kid? Have you seen that kid? And they change the list periodically because they keep growing. So the FBI came up with some very interesting statistics. And they told Phil, he said, "Do you have any idea how many kids disappear in the U.S. every year?" Well, Phil didn't, and he told him, he says, 2 million approximately every year. Of that, he says, we recover or find information out as to what happened to about 1 million. He says the other million we never find anything out about. And so that's 2 million a year, and this has been going on for at least 20 years. 20 million kids in 20 years who have vanished totally. Now suppose half of them got pulled into the Montauk program. That's about 10 million Montauk boys programmed and ready and waiting to be used for something. That's a hell of a secret army. Well, later on in '97, when the Air Force became involved in uncovering these Montauk tunnels, because this program was never military. This is the problem, which we had a great deal of problems trying to find out who's running the program. I always assumed it was a military or a government program. It was not. But in 1997, we started to take another look at it. That is, Preston, myself, and one or two other people. And Preston got into it very heavy because he found from the records, he was given access to the records for a period of time from that one location under Sag Harbor, Long Island, which is where one of the processing bases were. The Air Force captured some of the personnel involved with it. There were low-level personnel wearing very strange gray uniforms with no name badges or rank insignia. It was not a military organization. It was a paramilitary organization. And they didn't know much. But the records they found, of course, they found dossiers in that one location of some 30,000 Montauk boys. Full dossiers with photos and everything. Based on that, they started looking and finding other locations, and they started breaking into other locations. Before the year was out, the quote that came back to me via Preston was that in the United States alone, there were at least 5 million programmed Montauk boys. That was an Air Force official estimate, and it is a worldwide problem, unquote. But then as time went on, they went to electronic phase 2, I'll estimate 92, 93. It was much smoother. It left less mark on the aura, and the individual was a little bit more normal acting. They didn't act like they were restricted or that they were simply not functioning as a normal young kid. Phase 3 went into effect in late '97. I was in Denver, Colorado when this happened. And that turned out a product that was so smooth that you could hardly detect the person, either by normal observation, by body language, or even by aura. In terms of looking and finding the aura mark, or shall we say the aura signature, you had to really look and know what to look for to find it. And in terms of their normal behavior, they were almost completely spontaneous. So this is one of the things the Montauk Boys program does. It wrecks the spontaneity of a young person. But in phase 3, which is now a totally different electronic approach, no pads at all, strictly RF, put the person or the group, because they could do group processing, if it was for the same type of programming, the same program, I should say, they could process several at a time, up to about 30. You put them in this room, and it has certain RF radiating elements in it, and what it does is it radiates a microwave signal with the proper modulations, accesses the human brain in the proper locations, puts them in the proper state, implements the program, tells them you won't remember this ever happened, puts in the access keys, and then of course it's over. And they can do that in about 30 minutes, maybe it's less.